Here, I'm going off video.
Okay, no problem.
Gail, but I'm here.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I was just looking at a pamphlet, like a very old one that my daughters had from Beis Yaakov. Like it's just an old pamphlet, and I was reading the title. And so the title said, it was about Yom Kippur. So it's on Yom Kippur. It says, daven like your life depends on it, dash, because it does. Okay, so not such a simple sentence, right? Daven like your life depends on it because it does. So what does that mean to people? What does that mean?
How important it is.
Yeah, so how important is it?
The most important.
Yeah, because it's life.
Your life.
Yeah, life and death. So we don't really like that. Like, I don't know about you, but when you hear something like that, you're like, ah, yeah, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to think about that. But it's been a really crazy couple years, like this whole COVID scene. And it really has been very true, you know, all these ideas, right? Life and death are staring at us a lot more now than they've stared at us in a long time. And so sometimes, like when we talk about this, you know, it's hard. And you know, a lot of people who you loved, right, who didn't make it through the end of the year, right? Like Mrs. Hoffman died, right, by Rosh Chodesh Elul. So she lived to be 100, but she didn't, you know what I mean? Which is amazing. May all of us live to be 100 like she did. But you know what I'm saying? It's just an interesting idea, right? So it's not such a simple concept, and it's not an easy concept. And sometimes when you look back, you know, you'll see that people may have passed away, and yet you can say it really isn't tragic. And some people you're going to feel that passed away, and you're going to say, oh my gosh, it's so tragic, right? Life in itself in Judaism, how important is it?
Very.
Yeah, so Yoni's the adjective girl. Okay, I love it. So how important is it? Very. Okay, so what does that? You're the only one who's not like hiding. So I'm very, very appreciative. Okay, so I'm gonna have to end up picking on her. Okay, so Leonie, I'm gonna pick on you. What does it mean when we say very? Like, you know, how do we see that, and what's so special about life?
Oh, it has a huge value. It is it's probably, well, it is the most precious thing that we have. And so it's, what are you going to do with that life, and how are you going to make the most of it every single day?
Beautiful. It's really priceless, right? So right now they're doing this series on cities in the United States. It's called Dystopia. Like, you know, once upon a time, certain cities were utopia. San Francisco was probably one of the most beautiful cities in America. Today, it's like, I don't know, a Gehenna hole. Like, it is disgusting. Okay. So there's people there, like tons of homeless people shooting up their drugs in public. Right now in San Francisco, if you rob someone for less than $950 worth of something, you're not prosecuted anymore. You get a citation. So people have stores where people are walking in, like tons of the homeless that are just living all over the streets, right? All like doped up, drugged up, like it's incredible. And they walk into a store and it's petty thievery. So they're just, this is exactly in the times of Noah. So like they will steal like things under $950. So 10 guys walk in, or 10 people walk in, and they start taking like potatoes, onions, this, that. But the poor guy who owns the store can't do anything about it, right? And you look at these lives and they're like doing horrible things on the street. Like the bathroom is the street to them. Like they just will do what they have to do in front of everybody on the streets. They live in these tents. They've got needles. They give them needles because they're trying to make sure that AIDS and these kinds of things don't spread. So the government is providing them with needles to shoot up their drugs. So it's just all publicly happening, right? Is that life? Like, it's so sad, really. It's life is potential, right? What's the potential? To choose wisely, to do the right thing, to be close to Hashem. But that to me is called the living dead. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very sad. And sometimes death, which we could look at and we can kind of feel is tragic, can be a good thing, right? People are suffering, they grew older, they did their job, they die as tzaddikim, shtai like a tzeddekes. Mrs. Hoffman. That's not tragic at 100 years old. A life well lived is amazing, right? She used to say, Rebbetzin Jungreis, her husband was never diagnosed with cancer. She really loved him. And he died within 6 weeks, I think, of his diagnosis. So she said, like, a good life, wait a second. is not necessarily a long life, and a long life is not necessarily a good life, but a good life is a good thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, in other words, understood, like, it's not necessarily the quantity of time. Do you know what I mean? It's what you've done with your life. So it's just interesting that before Rosh Hashanah, like, you're sitting here and you're really davening, right? And for you and for your family and for your friends and all your loved ones, like, you're saying, please Hashem, put us in the book of life. But that book of life is not life on a street in San Francisco. Do you know what I mean? That book of life is the idea of maximizing your potential, right? And sometimes if Chas v'Shalom, Hashem says, no, it's not the book of life, it's going to be a different book, right? We sometimes have to understand that it's for many different reasons. And, it's sort of good sometimes to have a little bit of a focus on those reasons. And some of those reasons, interesting, there's a concept like, can you ever celebrate death? It's interesting. Like, the topic is, I think, a very fascinating topic. We have to ask ourselves these different questions. So first, I just want to talk to you about the Malach HaMaves, okay? All right. So when we talk about death, we always say God sent the angel of death, all right? So who is the angel of death? Anybody know? He's the angel of death now. Okay, who is the angel of death? Okay, he's one reality. It's interesting because usually they say, like, the angels don't have so many jobs, but this angel has 2 more jobs. And when you have 2 more jobs, you get 2 more names. So what are the 2 more names that the angel of death has? Anybody know? Because it's important to know these. These things are very important for you to know. Okay, all right. So the angel of death is the Malach HaMaves. The angel of death is the Yetzer Hara, and the angel of death is the Satan. Okay, so when you hear those words, know that all 3 are one single entity, and they have something very in common. Because when we talk about life, we're talking about that potential to do good. So the Yetzer Hara wants to kill your potential. Okay, so all those times that you feel down about yourself and you get that voice that, yeah, what I do doesn't matter, nobody cares about me, I'm not loved, blah, 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 blah. Know that that's a death. It's really a death sentence. If you live with that kind of thought in your mind, right? If you think about it, it's literally like a death sentence. So it makes so much sense to me that the Yetzer Hara, the Satan, and all of these are the same people. Who is, when he's the Yetzer Hara, it's that voice, okay? You want to do the right thing. He tells you, what? Nah, yeah, it's crazy. You don't need to do that, right? And the things that you aren't supposed to do, he goes, go ahead, watch 5 hours of Netflix. You know what I mean? Like, he's always the opposite. He's the opposing reality that you have. The Satan is who? What does the Satan do? And this is what I hate about the Yetzer Hara. It's like these people who, like, they trip you up and then they get you. So that's what the Satan does. The Satan is that after he's tripped you up, the Yetzer Hara tripped you up, right? And you did this naughty thing, or you spent a whole day with the covers over your head. Then guess what? The Satan runs up to prosecute you. Okay? And then Hashem says, oh, you're the prosecutor. Now you'll also be the one who does the dirty work, right? Who brings out the punishment. And that is when you become the Malach HaMaves. But all of them are always around the same idea. You ended up blowing your potential, and now Mida Keneged Mida, you're punished with the same reality. The same person that you fell for will be the same person who gives it to you. It's almost like, when your parents tell you, like, don't hang around with those kids. They're very big bullies. And you're going to see, if you hang around with them, one day they're going to turn on you. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. So I'm just going to tell you a joke to lighten up this subject. Okay. All right. So this is a really sweet lady. Her name is Malki Schwartz. Okay. So Malki Schwartz gets into this accident. No, she has a heart attack. Poor Malki Schwartz has a heart attack, and they rush her into the hospital, and she's like barely there. And then it looks like she's gone, and she's like, her body's floating up, and the Malach HaMaves is there, and he says, oh, Malki. And she goes, yeah, please don't take me. Goes, okay, give you another chance. All right. So she just ends up with this like little near-death experience, and she comes back. And before he sent her back, he said, Malki, just behave yourself. I'll give you another 20 years. Okay, so she comes back. Malki says, you know what? I got another 20 years. I'm going to live them to the fullest. So she asks the surgeon who was working on her, she says, like, take me to the plastic surgeon. All right, so now I got 20 more years to go. I'm going looking the way I want to look. Okay, so she gets everything done, facelift, body lift, you name it. Okay, so she walks out of the hospital. She looks phenomenal. And she crosses the street and a car hits her. And this time done. She goes all the way up to heaven, right? She sees the Malach HaMavis. She goes, I don't get you. You promised me another 20 years. He goes, it's not my fault. You look 20 years younger. I didn't recognize you. So the moral of the story is just, forget about that part of you. Just live the way you are. Okay? Don't try to, outsmart your ages. But anyway, it's just an interesting idea. So there were great rabbis in the Talmud. Like, this was a big discussion in the Talmud, life and death. It really was. Like, right. Is life a good thing? Is death a good thing? Does life give birth to death? Does death give birth to life? Like, it's a lot of depth here. So there's one great rabbi, his name is Rebbe Yeshua. And Rebbe Yeshua really was pained by the fact that there was death in the world. Originally, when man was created, right? Adam Harishon was supposed to live how long with Chava in Gan Eden? Yes, for eternity. Good girl, Leora. So what happened? They were supposed to earn their eternity. Nobody wants to get freebies, all right? If you're just like handed things, it means nothing to you. Take it all for granted. He had one little test, one of those do not do mitzvahs, okay? Your mitzvah is do not do. And it was not to eat from the Eitz Hadas. Then he that was it. Now good and bad is all confused and it's inside of you. And now we got to work so hard. And Hashem said, you know what? I'm going to have to bring death. You know why? Because to live like that forever would just be a mess. Yeah, you would never be able to do your real, it would just be forever and ever that we would be like this. Obviously, we couldn't do it. Okay. So, and we were not in a state of perfection. So now you have X amount of time to try to perfect yourself. So Rabbi Yeshua said, no, God, doesn't matter. Please, death can be so tragic. Like, it's so depressing. It's so sad. And he really, really begs Hashem, get rid of this Malach HaMavis, all right? And he falls asleep and he dreams that he took the sword of the Malach HaMavis. He takes the sword of the Malach HaMavis and he's so happy. And he realizes Hashem is answering his prayers. And then he hears this great moan. And this great moan turns into a great sob and turns into a great cry. And the earth is shaking from all this crying and sobbing. And he turns to Hashem. He says, what's going on? What is this noise? And he says, it's the world crying because it wants death. We said, what do you mean? He said, because the world can't be without death. Why could the world not be without death? Why do you think the world would be crying for death? It's a very interesting Gemara. Why do you think the world would be crying for death? I think we have to appreciate, I hate to say this, the depth of Disney, okay? But when you saw, anybody see The Lion King, you could see how much I know about what's going on in there on TV. All I can remember is these shows. Okay, so The Lion King. If you look at The Lion King, right, he talks to the, what's his name? I guess the King Lion talks to, what's his name? Simba, his son. And he talks to him about this thing called the cycle of life. And that really death gives birth. It's so interesting, but like a flower has to die to be able to bloom again. A tree to be reborn, to give you new fruit, to give you new anything, it has to go through death to become new. And it was interesting, like the earth was crying, saying like, this is the cycle that we're in. If we do not have things that die, then we do not make room for the new. An interesting idea. So that's like, like when that's the whole cycle. Like, that's why it's very funny. But when someone dies, you go home and you have this Shiva meal, right? That very first meal that you eat as a mourner. What are you supposed to eat? Yeah, I can't, Leonie, are you saying a bagel or an egg?
A bagel and an egg.
Yes, a bagel and an egg, right? And the same thing, even when you put the egg when you're making your challah, you crack your egg and we always say you daven for each ingredient. So what are you davening for when you crack the egg? What are you supposed to have in mind when you eat the bagel, when you eat the egg as a mourner? What are you symbolizing to the world?
going to continue.
Yes, you're right. That's what we're doing. That there is a cycle to life. Okay, so we really, also, I want you to appreciate something in Judaism that's like hard to understand, but we don't really believe in death at all. Like it's we don't get it, but we don't believe that anybody really dies. The body, is buried in the ground and the skeleton always remains. You know what I mean? And we believe that there will be a resurrection one day. We actually believe that you are going into another form of life. We don't believe that you've died. It's a different reality, but it's not the end of the end of the end, right? And we also actually believe that the soul's energy always remains. When you go to visit your parents at the kever, and if you think about it, like stop for a whole second and realize the place that they're buried, you know what it's called? It's the weirdest name you ever could imagine. What's a cemetery in Judaism? What's it called? It's called Beis HaChaim. Okay. Do you know that? It's called Beis HaChaim. What does that mean?
A place of life.
Yes. Okay. And how do you treat a cemetery? Like, how do we treat a cemetery? It's very dignified. You're not allowed to let it get messy and unruly and this and that. And every time that you're going and you're putting isn't it? It's a very interesting custom, minhag that we have. What's the minhag that we have when we go to visit people in the cemetery? Yeah. So why are we placing stones on this thing? Why are we placing stones? You're building a monument to them. Do you know that? Like you're adding on to their monument. You know how you have that? It's really called a yad. A monument is a yad. That's why it's yad v'shem. It's a real a name and a hand. So it's really your legacy, your monument. So when you come, you're putting on a stone, right? You're putting on their legacy. You're like helping it grow, right? It's an interesting idea. So okay, so I'm just going to wait 1 second. I'm just going to mute that. Okay, so we don't believe that you've really died. And, it's interesting. Like I see it very much with Chabad and with Torah, right? So I'm going to be honest. I think the Rebbe died how much? 20 something odd years ago, if I'm not mistaken, right? Could even be more. Am I right? I think so. Some odd 20 years ago. So when he passed away, like what were you thinking of the future of Chabad? Like, let's all be real. Over. I literally thought it was over. The whole, like, there was a lot of different, philosophies within the organization. And I just thought, forget it. Like, that's it, right? Over. Then instead, it's only expanded. Okay. Now, if you looked at Torah, to lose Rav Noach was humongous, right? And the building that, that big, beautiful building in Yerushalayim wasn't even finished. Do you know what I mean? And he was, let's say, the heart and the soul and the brain of that whole reality. So I thought when he passed away, I have to be honest, what did I think was going to happen? Over. So what's the Torah tell you? The opposite happens. Because when they're in their lifetime, their soul is constrained by the body. Now they have a completely different, like, spiritual influence that's even wider and more expansive. It's very interesting to see, it's very interesting. So there is that part, like, so although death may look so final, what the Torah is trying to tell you, it's a huge cycle that's only going to bring birth, right? So for some of us, like you've lost, losing your parents is terrible. Like I don't think I 100% got over it. And it's like 20 something odd years, if not more. Okay. But there was a certain growth and a certain expansiveness that I don't know if I would have had these, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like there was anybody relating to what I'm saying? Totally. Yeah. So it's just an interest. So it's just like, it's important for us because you're coming now to Rosh Hashanah and we are going to daven for this. And don't be stupid. You don't daven for death. Okay. That's very, very foolish because you want to always have every single minute to achieve. As great as this next existence is. It's not the existence of the ability to do. And really the ability to do is probably one of the greatest gifts Hashem can ever give you. Like, right? All of us, no? Everybody wants to feel purpose and meaning and accomplishment. It's very, very nice to cash in, but, right? It's hard. So it's just something for us to understand. That's why we're going to go through this. We really want to understand the Torah's view on death, okay? So, because it's an important part of our story, an important part of our journey. So I was listening to Sheila Miller, and she said the best line ever that her mother used to say, okay? So, you know, people would sit around and go, oy vey, so-and-so, they passed away, and oy vey, so-and-so, they passed away, and oy vey, this one passed away. So Mrs. Hochman would say, you know why they passed away? Because they were born, okay? So, okay, as funny as that sounds, bottom line, okay, you know why they passed away? Because they were born. It's part of the reality of the cycle of the life that we are in. It's just an important reality to understand it. Okay, so there was another story, similar story in the Gemara, where this man was crying and crying over his friend. Like, his friend was this wonderful person. He did so many good things, and Hashem took him, I think, early. He's crying, also cries to Hashem. He says, why did you do this? Why did you do this? Why did you do this? So Hashem says, would you like it better if he didn't die? Yes, I would like it if there was no death in this world. So Hashem says, okay, I will take you to a place where there is no death. So he gets to this place, gorgeous forest, stunning. Like, he gets to go to Banff. That's what I would say. Okay. He goes to Banff and he sees like the Rockies and the forest and everything's so beautiful, right? And he's just looking at it and he realizes, like, you know, time passes, nothing ever dies. It's always the same tree, the same flower, the same this, the same that. Nothing ever changes. Nothing ever moves. Everything is stagnant. And after a while, he says, you know what? I don't like it this way. I want to see the new. I want to see something change. I want to see this. I want to see that. So it's very interesting, right? If you have something forever and ever, never, 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 you know what would happen? You would just take it all for granted, right? That's just who we are. Like, in the next world, when you'll have eternity, it'll be a different perspective. You won't have this Yetzer Hara. You won't have this need, you know what I mean? To see things new and different, and we gotta have this, we gotta have that. Like, same old will be just so beautiful. You know, it's an interesting idea, right? But for right now, in the world that we're in, it can't be forever. It just can't be. Not in the same form. Maybe in different forms. You'll feel your parents' presence, or you'll feel someone who loves you in a different way, right? But not in the same form, not forever. Okay? So I thought this was just all very interesting. Okay. Okay, so we said now. Okay. Right, let me just look, because some of this stuff is hard. It's going to be hard to hear and hard to say. Okay, let me see. Okay, so we said that. All right, sorry, just want to go through this. Okay, so now it's interesting. They say, can death be a time of celebration? So can death be a time of celebration? So the philosopher is standing on the shore. Interesting, okay, standing on the shore. And they're about to launch a boat. I don't know why they always have to break champagne on a boat. Somebody has to remind, there was a reason for this. Like, the first time it ever happened was with the Titanic. Oh yeah, now I remember. They broke champagne against the bottle against the Titanic. It was a very big statement of our greatness and our power. Like, nothing can stop us, you know, and then they smashed the champagne. And that was the ship that went down. You know, the ship of Kochi ve'etzem yadi. That ship represented, we don't need you, God. It's the power of your hand. Anyhow, so he's standing at the shore, this philosopher, and he sees one of these ships is about to launch, and all these happy people waving. They're going on this big, long journey, you know, and they smash the champagne bottle. And out of the corner of his eye, he sees another ship. returning, and this ship has returned, and it's been through such a long, hard voyage, and yet they're coming back to shore. And he starts laughing, and he says how foolish we are. Like, we celebrate the fact that the ship is starting, but we have no idea what its end will be or what kind of voyage it's had. But the voyage of the ship, right, that went through all the trials and tribulations and comes home safely, that's the ship that really deserves the celebration. So I want to tell you what it says in Koheles. Very interesting. So in Koheles it says, a good name is better than good oil, and the day of death is better than the day of birth. So what's Koheles trying to tell you? A good name is better than good oil, and the day of death is better than the day of birth. What's Koheles trying to tell you? I'll say it one more time. They're like, you have to think. These are thinky things. A good name is better than good oil, and the day of death than the day of birth. Okay.
A good name stays with you forever.
Yes, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. A good name stays with you forever. A good name is your own solid, hard effort. And for you to be a mensch through your lifetime, that is incredible. Like, really, not even that you even succeeded. I was listening, I can't remember the name, but like, Baruch Hashem, there was a great, great simcha for the Jewish people, right? This little boy got lost in Canarsie Park, right? And, I know, I was listening from the Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. So Michael Rothschild was speaking, and he was saying, like, we should be so grateful that we are Jews and that we're part of the Jewish people. It was a pouring, horrible, terrible day when this kid got lost, and 1,000 people showed up to find him. 1,000 people showed up to find this one 7-year-old boy who got lost in a park. Okay, 1,000 Jewish people came out. That's incredible. Like, really, there's no other nation that does that. You ask the police force and they'll tell you they never get something like that happen. Okay, right? So all the people who came out to do that, like, better is, they could be all home saying, where's my good oil? Okay, I got to make money. I got to do this. I got to do that. No, better is the good name. Better is those mitzvahs that pull. You did it. You tried your best to be that great person. Better is death than birth, because what are they saying? It's what I told you with the ship. You have no idea when somebody comes to this world what they will be. You think about, like, there's some real Rishaim out there, really wicked people. They were little babies once upon a time. You know what I mean? Like Hitler, Yamach Shemai. I mean, I don't believe he was ever cute, but who knows? Okay, you know what I mean? Like, think about it, right? Better is the day of death when I know what you've done and what you've accomplished. Now I can rest in peace, so to speak, if I lived in peace. All right? There's just an interesting idea. Okay?
And life is a hard journey.
It is. It is. It really is. Okay, so we as Jews, we have a strong belief in life after life. Okay? Life after life. That's what we believe in. Today, this is becoming more of a reality to people since the 1970s, when near-death experiences have been much more studied and journaled and understood. So before that, I guess we didn't have realities where people would be resuscitated and being able to bring them back, right? People would be brain dead, this dead, that dead. You couldn't find a pulse. You never see them again. They just put the little blankie over you and goodbye. But here, they keep trying to resuscitate you, and people have come back. And people will talk about this experience, these near-death experiences. Anybody have any ideas of what people say happens in those near-death experiences? Okay, anybody?
They talk about a bright light.
Yes. Okay, so what's so interesting is that they can be, which is interesting because there is a concept in Judaism for those who are, wait 1 second, for those people in non-Jews and Jews alike, right, who are spiritual, who are good people, there is a heaven for the non-Jew, you know what I mean? And it's something that we have to appreciate, right? And there's a heaven for us, right? So those people, though, who really are complete atheists and couldn't care less about Hashem, it's interesting. I remember reading an article once where this guy was exactly that. He was a radio talk show host. He was a complete atheist, and he used to, he died. He had what should have been a near-death experience. He was resuscitated. He saw absolutely nothing, felt absolutely nothing. And he said to everybody, see, I'm living proof that all this stuff is garbage, like I said it was. So how do you answer that? How do you answer that this guy could die, be resuscitated, and tell you he felt nothing, saw nothing, it was all bunk, and now it's all bunk, where there's hundreds of thousands of other people who said they had similar experiences, and all these people have died in different ways, like one on the operating table, one, hemorrhaging, one, in a plane crash, whatever it is, right? They've all experienced a different reality. It's not drug induced. You know what I'm saying? So yet there's this person who goes through that whole experience and just says, I saw nothing. Why would he see nothing?
Hashem showed him nothing.
Say that again.
No belief in anything.
Yes, mida keneged mida. That's exactly right, buddy. You will see nothing. You will have one moment where Hashem will say, Ani Hashem, and then you will get your just dessert. You didn't want anything more. You didn't believe in anything more. You will get nothing more. This is a very interesting idea. And probably didn't do, anything that deserved anything more. Okay, but we believe, right, in this whole other reality. Okay, so you believe, there's a light, there's a comfort. What's very interesting that all of us have to really understand, if the body is dead and all these people tell you, I saw this and I heard this, what's the question? The body is laying on the table listless, like, right? They're waving their hand in front of it. They're clapping by the ears. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? And nothing. Body is, okay? Just an empty shell. And meanwhile, these people are saying, I floated up and I saw, and they will tell over the story. They'll say, this doctor was the one who pronounced me dead. Then this person came into the room. Then this happened. You know what I mean? And then when they revive, they tell over the story and they tell the correct details. So how is that possible? So now you know that, what?
Is another reality.
Yes, the neshama. The neshama has senses. That's what you end up seeing. That when the neshama is not encased by the body, it still has abilities. It's very, very interesting. It still has abilities. It doesn't maybe have an arm to put tefillin on and a head to put tefillin on or a head to put shaitel on. You know what I mean? But it still has like an awareness and senses and this and that. It's like a very, phenomenal reality. That's why you're saying that you're going to experience something in this next world. When we talk about some kind of a pleasure, and most of these people who come back from these near-death experiences, it's so hard for them to articulate, because this pleasure that they experienced is unlike any pleasure that there is in this world, just like it says in the Torah, right? That you can combine all the pleasures of every single person and every 7 billion people over 3,000 years or 5,000 years of history, and it still won't feel the way that feels, right? Where you feel this, like this complete neshama, the pleasure of neshama, pleasure of spirituality, pleasure of a closeness to Hashem. It's just very, very phenomenal. That's what it really is. Okay. So this is interesting for us. So why am I telling you all this? Why am I telling you all this? Because it's hard to go through a year davening, right, for life when you see people don't get it. And then you're like, just so broken, and you're thinking like, what the heck is this all about? Like, we're just never getting out of here. This is just a mess. So what's the Torah trying to tell you? Death is not a mess. Okay, death has a lot of purpose. Death can be very pleasurable. Death can be a celebration, and then it can't. And when we'll explain when it isn't, or when it doesn't feel like it is, what's going on. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you need, what's this whole class about? Amuna. You're going to need amuna to be able to navigate through all these different things in our lives, and to navigate through a new year, and to know what you're davening for, right? Okay. So it's just interesting, okay? Okay. And in fact, what do they say? That most of these people, which is 100% true, they come back, they say like, why'd you bring me back? It felt so good. But the reality is it feels really good, right? But again, nothing feels better. In fact, that's what the Torah even tells you. As great as that pleasure is, it can never be as great as the pleasure is when you fought that Yetzer Hara and you did the next right thing, right? That pleasure of self-creation is like on the top, all right? All right. Now, okay, so what has it done for most people? Most people, when they come out of those experiences, feel more spiritual and feel more purpose, okay, in life. So sometimes these brushes with death or death itself, right? Someone dying in your life, sometimes it can bring you to greatness. It can bring you to something more. You can, you don't take people so for granted. You don't take certain realities for granted. It teaches you a lesson. You hear stories, this one lost this and this one lost that. And you turn around, you just want to go home and hug your baby. You know what I mean? Because you realize like, Baruch Hashem, So that also is another reason, also plays a reality. I want to tell you just side point that's very important. Death is not only about the neshama, it's also about the body. It's an interesting idea. So even though the neshama leaves the body, what do we do with the body?
We protect it, we wrap it.
Yeah, I'm very glad you said that. Okay, so the body, we have something called kavod mace. You have something about being respectful to the dead. Okay, so I'm going to tell you something. When the Chevra Kadisha has to take care of the body, they can't even pass something over the body. Like, let's say one person on the table has to pass someone over, like a shmata. They have to take care of the nails of the person. They clean them perfectly. It's very much like going to the mikvah. Okay, so you need to, give the other person on the Chevra Kadisha the cloth to wash the dead person's nails. So you know what you have to do? You have to walk the whole way around. You can't even pass something over. When you go to do the Chevra Kadisha, you shouldn't go in shlumpy clothes. Like it's an interesting thing. Okay, you can't go in shlumpy clothes. You can't talk about anything. I can't be taking care of a tahara, taking care of a body and going, oh yeah, you won't believe it. I forgot the carpool. Oh, I didn't make dinner. Okay, you can't talk shtusi talk. And what you're supposed to do is try to say, if you know the person, definitely to say beautiful things about them. They say that the person who's doing the Chevra Kadisha, the Tara, before they leave the room, you have to ask Mechila. Do you know that? You ask Mechila from the body of a dead person. Okay? The body still has, the soul is still hovering around, right? And the body in and of itself is like a holy vessel. The same thing like Shamish, like which people in the world take their old books, because they have Hashem's name in it, they bury them in the ground. Like most people take their old books and it goes in the blue box, all right, and let it go. Right? Like who here has bags and bags of Shamish in their house that you're like, what am I going to do with all this? So this is how we treat things. I just want you to know when it comes to the body is considered a holy reality, and therefore it has to be buried. Hashem says in the Torah, from dust to dust. You have to go back into dust, all right? That's the order of events for the body, right? And we say, whatever's happening is decomposing, but there's a part of the body that's remaining for when we have Tchiyat HaMetim. Therefore what? Therefore, you have any relatives who chas v'shalom are ignorant and they don't know better, try to avoid anyone getting cremated, all right? Because that is not what we want to do to the body. Our body is considered a holy vessel. We don't burn it. And nebuch for all those people who were cremated during the Holocaust. But Hashem knows who they are, and that was not their choice. Do you know what I mean? And Hashem will take care of their ashes. But generally speaking, we do not volunteer for that, all right? And the natural way is that you go into the earth, right? And that's the natural way for the body to return to Hashem, okay? So now, when it comes to talking about this afterlife, there's a very famous parable out there. I just have to mute. Okay, there's a very famous parable out there. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. It's these two twins who are talking to each other when they are in the womb. Because what are we looking at in Yiddishkeit? If you look into Tehillim, Hashem is, we say this to Tehillim all the time. Hashem yishmor tzeischa uveyacha me'ata v'ad olam. We saying it, I think, every Tuesday, right? It's Shir Lamal, the 121. So it doesn't make sense. Hashem watches your going outs and you're coming in. Usually it talks about you went in and then you went out, not you went out and then you went in. Okay, that's not usually the way we speak in language when we talk about movement. So why is that? Because the neshama is coming out of the kisei hakavod, right? It's up in Shemayim. It's being sent into this baby's body that's in the womb. Then it's coming out of the womb into this world. You see all the traveling that we're doing? We really are always journeying, okay? And then from this world, it's going out and back into the Olam HaEmes, Olam HaNeshamos. Okay, so that's why it's all this Tzeischa Uveyacha. Okay, so what was going on? The two twins are in the womb and one twin is saying, do you think there's any life after this? Like, are we just meant to live here in this little comfy, cozy womb where we're fed through whatever, the pipe, and we're living in this water and it's so warm and yummy and it's great and here we're growing and it's just great and that's it, this must be it. And the other one goes, no, I don't think so. It's just not possible. Like, I don't think that this is it. There's got to be more to this than just hanging out over here. I actually think there's going to be life, and I actually think we're going to move, and it's going to be a whole thing. And the other one's crying, like, no way. Like, how are we going to eat? How are we going to manage? Like, this can't be possible. And the other one says, no, I really think there is life after this delivery, and he's having a very hard time articulating it, right? Because it's a world he feels strongly exists, but he's never really seen it, right? And then the other one says, no, it's nonsense, and there's nothing but darkness. And then he says, no, I think we're going to meet the mother who takes care of us. And then the other one goes, you actually believe in a mother who takes care of us? Like, that you're inside? Like, the mashal is so incredible because that's what we believe, right? Baruch HaMakom, Hashem is everything, right? On Shabbos, we had Chana Spiro speak, and she spoke so nicely. She said, right now in Elul, you are in Hashem's compassion. You're in it right now. So you're in Hashem, in his compassion. So says, I don't see her. So this is what the twin who believes there is a mother says. Sometimes when you're in silence and you focus and you listen, you can perceive her presence and you can hear her loving voice calling down from above. And they say now that they have and I guess with the ultrasounds and with whatever, that they know that the babies can hear their mothers. They can hear their heartbeat. They say even the music that you listen to can affect the baby. Like when they're listening to hard rock, like they say the babies are all like the heart beats up, which makes sense. Okay. Anybody ever listen to hard rock? Okay. So when you're listening to classical music, then the baby's a lot calmer. Okay. Right. Music for a crazy world. All right. So it's just very interesting. So you could see this is such a perfect mashal nimshal. This is probably, nothing is happening coincidentally. Hashem is creating us in a way, right? This whole parent-child relationship and husband and wife and being born this way is all Hashem's way of us finding him in the reality of regular life. Okay. So then what happens? Baruch Hashem, the baby is born. The one who's second, who was the non-believer, he's waiting to hear what happened to my brother. And then he hears, he goes, oh my gosh, he died, it's terrible, he died. And then what does he hear? Mazel tov, mazel tov. And then he comes out. Anyone who had a near-death experience, they will all tell you, it's, you can look at all the literature and it will say, what did they hear? Voices. And who were the voices that they heard? Voices of family. They heard people saying, oh, they're coming, she's coming. And everybody's so excited. Okay, so we could see this transfer. Now, but what does the Zohar tell us? Oh boy, what does he tell us? As long as a person is unsuccessful in his purpose in this world, the Holy One, blessed be He, uproots him and replants him over and over again. Okay, so there is a very famous, that is the Zohar's, what is that? What's that a hint to? What is that a hint to? This idea that you didn't complete your purpose in the world, then Hashem uproots you and replants you. What does that mean?
Reincarnation.
Yes, it means reincarnation. Okay, so I want to tell you another place where it talks about reincarnation in the Torah itself, which is always like, it's a hard sentence, and I just want to find it for a minute. Let me just see. Okay, wait. It talks about, like, with children, that Hashem is poked avon avos al banim for 4 generations. It's like Hashem remembers the sins of the fathers on the child for 4 generations. It doesn't sound good. That sounds like very unfair. It sounds like, what do you mean? Like Hashem holds, like, like I'm going to be punished for my parents' sins? That's what it sounds like. So I'm going to give you 3 different explanations. They're all interesting. They're all worth listening to. So the first one is obvious. Hashem is only going to, he's giving you a chance. Hashem is waiting patiently for you to do tshuva on sins that you may be repeating like your parents did. Okay, so like your parents did this, you didn't learn any better, and you end up repeating it. All right, that's one explanation. Second explanation is that when Hashem is checking you, like let's say you're doing something not great, Hashem will go back and he'll see, how did your parents raise you? If your parents raised you that you have, if you're born in Harlem, okay, like stealing is not an Aveira. It's just not. Like there's very little free will choice for a child who's born in Harlem. Drugs is it's like there's no free will choice almost, right? Mostly everybody is stealing. Mostly everybody is doing drugs. There is no moral barometer to tell you anything different. So it's very, very hard for you to be accountable. So Hashem says, like, if your parents, that will stand in your stead. You know what I mean? Like look, if you're not emotionally so secure, right? You don't have tons of confidence. It's really hard for you to be besimcha because you had a very rough childhood, right? So Hashem is going to take that into account. Like he knows who you are, where you come from. He knows, on that ladder where you're standing and what one step for you is compared to someone else who had it all, you know what I mean? And then they move up and it's right. So that's one thing. And then the third thing they say, it's reincarnation. That's this idea. The parents sin. You as the parent, you didn't fix yourself up. Now you're going to have to be born again as a child and born again as a child and born again as a child. It could take 4 generations of your soul coming home, right? To finally get its tikkun. Okay. So sometimes that's when you will see like little children die young. It doesn't make any sense. Like how can a baby comes to this world, comes very sick? Okay, we're davening for situations like this, right? What did this baby do? You know what I mean? That he should come Chalila with, Yenamachla. What did he do? What did he do? He just came to the world. He was just born like any other baby. It's very, very, very heartbreaking. So what's going on here? What are the possibilities here? What are the possibilities here? What are the possibilities? I'm asking you out loud. Like, where are you going to have a muna that this isn't cruelty? Because it's very, very hard, right? You hear it and it seems so cruel. And on top, we say Tehillim and trying to keep this baby alive and trying to keep him, and you're in the hospital and he's hooked up. Like I was talking to somebody and they said to me, I don't understand why you're even bothering. Like, why don't we just let him go? So what's going on here? Here I am, right? It's Rosh Hashanah. We're davening. Chaim, give me life, keep us away from us. So what's going on? I'm asking you. Does anybody have any ideas? Any answers to this? How are you going to, people are going to ask you, how are you going to say, no, God is not cruel. God is really loving. Everything he does is for the good. This too is good. How is this too good?
Well, I think in the same way that you gave the story about the two twins in the womb, and one has a perspective and the other has a different perspective, we just don't know. So while what my mother Aug15 used to say, while there's life, there's hope. Like you just don't know what there is.
Right. Beautiful. Okay, beautiful. So while there is life, there is hope. That's number one. Number two, like this could be that story, the Gilgal story. I'm just between us. You don't say these things necessarily to the parents. Okay. We have to be very careful what you say to people when they're in pain. But there's things that you have to say for yourself for that bigger picture. Okay. So it could be, this is it. This baby is a Gilgal. He's a teeny tiny tikkun left, right? In his merit, 300 people said to him. That's what this person needed, just to finish their, reality off, right? In his merit, all these mitzvahs come to this world. The parents get a huge merit because the kind of love and sympathy and empathy and even the pain that they have to go through, like it's all in the end to make them better and closer to Hashem. The question is to use it that way. Like a lot of times these kinds of tragedies are very difficult for people. And instead of, they turn the other direction, right? Because why? Because every test you can pass or you can fail. That's all. That's the way it is, right? But you could look at this, like here's again, like where you're looking at a death. Yes, it's terribly, terribly tragic. But on the other side, right? Good things can be involved in the reality. And then always what Leonie said is the bottom line to everything. Whenever you're dealing with Hashem and his deck of cards that he's dealt you, the first thing you have to do is pick up the card and say, I don't understand. I only accept this all because I know I love you and you love me. And there's a bigger picture here. This is just one stop on the train, but it ain't the final stop. There's a much bigger picture, right? Right? Death has another whole reality. For the person who passed on, right? It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's another reality that we, doesn't seem, it's a better place, right? It's a better place. And if there's any, rehab that they need, that rehab comes to an end. It's not an endless rehab unless you chas v'shalom were a Russia Marusha. And thank Hashem. I don't know that there's so many Russia Marushas. Please, Hashem, don't let them all do tshuva. You know what I mean? Like, right? So it's just a lot for us to be thinking about and looking at. So that is an interesting thing that we have to know. Okay, so we have to know that death has many roles for it to play. Death is also connected to the concept of a correction. All right, death is also connected, just like we said, to a concept. It can be connected to a celebration. It can also be connected to somewhat of a punishment. Okay, something had to happen, like suffering sometimes, right? We say suffering can be connected that you're just the best person ever and you love Hashem so much and he just wants to see if you could love him under all circumstances like Eeyore. There's some people like that. I don't know if we're all like that. Most of the time they say when you are suffering, you have to check who you are, where you're holding. Like, is there some kind of a mida keneged mida? Is there something that's missing here? Is this an opportunity? Like, you need to think. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we can't just, like, we'd like to like whitewash it all, but we can't always whitewash it. That's just, and that again is never for you to judge on another person. Chas v'shalom. Don't ever open your mouth and think you're smart. Oh, well, so-and-so, I get it because they deserved it. Never say something stupid like that because you really don't know. The only time Hashem is ever telling you to check your deeds is when it comes to your self. That's when you make those judgment calls, but you don't make them on anybody else. So you will see, okay? Like, I'm going to give you an example. It's not an easy example, okay? So everybody, like, don't shoot the messenger is what the Torah says. So Yehuda was the one at the end who sold Yosef to the caravan, right? And when they went to tell their father everything that happened, they made that nice little lie. It was an animal came and ate him, and here's his coat. What happened to the father? What happened to Yaakov when he heard Yosef died?
He almost died.
How did he almost die? You are perfect. How did he almost die? What did he go into?
Depression.
Massive. Okay, they said Hashem couldn't talk to him for 22 years. He was so depressed. Hashem said to Yehuda, like who's Yehuda? The Shevet that is the leader of the Jewish people, the Malach, like the Melech HaMashiach comes from Yehuda. So Hashem said to Yehuda, the reason why you could sell your brother was because you didn't have children and you had no idea what it felt like to lose a child. So I'm going to tell you now, Yehuda, Mida keneged Mida. You will get married and you will have 2 sons who die. And then you'll know what you did. Now, Baruch Hashem, we're not such tzaddikim like Yehuda. So hopefully we'll never get punished Mida keneged Mida like that. But that's an example. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? Where things are a little different when it comes to certain realities, and certain suffering that you have sometimes can come as a Mida keneged Mida for something that you did to someone else. Do you know what I mean? That you may not have realized. Okay. So you don't want to, what do we want to learn from this? What's all this trying to teach you? Like, it was such a big, heavy topic. What's it all trying to teach you? That number one, we should embrace life. That's number one. That's the number one story. Okay, when you're asking for life, you ask for life that's full of potential and understanding, and that you really ask Hashem, thank you so much for my life. Please don't let me take it for granted, because it's something that I feel badly, but I think it's easy to take for granted. I really do. Like, I think it really, really is. And then, like, it was funny. I called one of my friends today in New York. I said, so how's everything going? So she said, I'm going out of my way not to complain. Okay, she said, this is my new rule. I want to just say, I'm so happy because I really am blessed. And instead of fetching, like, she has to keep driving up and, in New York, they have this thing, they go to the mountains all the time. So like every minute she's unpacking, unpacking back. So she's telling me, like, what am I doing? Like, I sit here and I fetch about how I have to pack. She goes, I'm so lucky. I have this, place to go up and all the cousins are there. And like, she started telling me how beautiful it is. So that's number one, right? And then let's ask Hashem, like, you know what, Hashem, give me life. Shana tova umituka, a good and sweet year. Shana means change. Okay, give me a good, sweet change. Like, every year I want to grow. Please, Hashem, give me opportunities that are sweet and good and revealed good. Okay, I don't want to have to change nebuch from anything bad. Okay, when we see certain things happening, right? We see people being lost in the year, or this or that or that. Like, we have to also take it and realize, if they led a good life, let's be besimcha for them, right? And then what's it called? Like, it's a nice idea, realize that their soul is still here. It's still expansive. You still can do for them. Keep them in your mind. Remember their legacy. Take that legacy and let it go with you. And I'm just going to end with something in Yeshayahu, which is so nice. It just says, fear not. This is what Hashem is telling the Jewish people. And I think we got to take it with us to this next year. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by the name. You are mine. All right. That's this whole anila dodi v'dodili. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you won't be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon you. I am Hashem, your God, and you are mine. And that's what I think, like, regardless, okay? This is what we have to take with us, all right? This is what we want to take into the next beautiful new year. Okay, everybody? So I hope everybody was good with this. Yeah, we're good? Good? Okay. All right. You have a question? Anyone have a question? No? Okay. So Emirza Hashem, tomorrow is Shmona Esrei, and it's good. So I hope everybody will come. And what was I going to also say? I've been trying to think if we should do something for the Shloshim, like, for Mrs. Hochman, and also for this baby. I want to send something else. I don't know if it's like we should take on a mitzvah or we should do Tehillim because she was a big, like, you know what they call in Yiddish a Tehillim Zuger, like a person who said Tehillim. And so I'm just trying to think, like, but I don't know if Wednesday nights is a good night. Like, even if we did a half an hour, I would just do a half an hour. We would say Kapitel Tehillim together, and I could do a little explanation of different Tehillim. Is anybody into that? Yeah. So would Thursday? What
Yeah,
night?
that
Is good?
But when's the shloshim?
So the shloshim is going to be in, I'm imagining, in 30
3
days. Yeah, in 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks. So, but what do you think is a good night?
Wednesday. It's Tuesday
Is
for people.
Wednesday a good night? And because Thursday, I think, might be too much, right? Because everybody's getting ready for Shabbos. Okay, so let's say we did Wednesday, and should we do 8:30?
Gail, look at the calendar. We're coming up to Rosh Hashanah. Just look at the calendar and pick a date. You don't want to do it on Erev Rosh Hashanah or something like that.
No,
Like the date-
no, we wouldn't do it on any of those yontifs. And meanwhile, that's going to be all 30 days. No, we'll take. Okay, I'll take a look. Let me take a look. But if you guys,
The Wednesday before Rosh Hashanah is on a Monday night. So the Wednesday before maybe.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That'll
I would
probably
want to
be-
do it little consistently, like for the
Oh.
2 days. I'm talking about, like, you do it consistently. We would say, I mean, look, I think it's just like, again, you know, we have to daven like we mean it, because our life depends on it. It's not a joke. So, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm thinking. So, okay, so I'll send it out and you guys will give me feedback. Is that okay? I think that's a
How
good.
is the baby doing?
Still the same, like he's, you know,
In hospital?
he's in hospital, and Shmuel, I just want to stop the recording.